So look, what I'm going to do today is, we just came out with the top risks, which Ian and I write every year. I'm going to go through a medley of sort of the top 6. After that, during Q&A, please consider it open hunting season, and let's talk about anything you want to talk about, global politics and markets, really anything. So what I am going to do, just to sort of forecast, first talk about what I call independent America. You can call that Trump's world if you want. China overreacts, how we see China going this year. Merkel weaker. We'll talk about Europe. No reform, which I think is a very market-relevant macro take on a troubled international investment climate this year. The politicization of central banks and wind up with North Korea, Kim Jong-un, which made our top risk list for the first time. So let me begin. 2017, I think we begin a period of what we call geopolitical recession. And by that we mean, or I mean, that political leadership in the world will be hard to find, geopolitical leadership in the international arena. Stability will be in decline. Stability will be receding, hence recession. Now, we've seen this kind of brewing, forming. It's not all that new when you think about it. America, under President Obama, has been increasingly reluctant to play a leadership role. We even led from behind in Libya. We're not up front anymore. We're not at the point. American allies have been saying, well, really, how committed are they to us? There's been plays by China and Russia to take over, recast the system for a while. I think that further took shape in 2016 when we saw the pivot to Asia collapse with TPP's collapse. When Putin won the war in Syria, let's be blunt about it, that's where we are right now, we can come back to that. But this trend towards geopolitical recession really takes full form with the election of Donald Trump. And here, there are 2 key components. First, the worldview of Trump, that the US is not an indispensable nation, as Madeleine Albright, my former boss, coined. The US is no longer an indispensable nation. Secondly, that, at least in my view, the era of Pax Americana is over with the coming of Donald Trump. The US will no longer provide the guardrails for the international security system, for the international trading system. So, in short, I think we're entering a period, and my colleagues have said this before, I never said it before. I think we're entering a period where geopolitical risk in the world is going to be at unprecedented highs this year and in coming years. I think anyone who thinks that today's frosty market doesn't have problems that are chasing it ought to look hard at geopolitics, because I think we're going to see a tremendous amount of geopolitical volatility over the next year, at least. So then independent America. Trump's very good at messaging. I don't have to state the obvious. And with he's really played on Americans, I think, fundamental, most base, and most sophisticated, all at one time, value, which is independence. Independence from alliances that constrain pure pursuit of American interests. Independence from free trade agreements that cost us money and cost us jobs. Independence from alliances where he thinks we're being used. We're paying for stuff and we're not getting much back. And I think that is a very powerful and sort of fundamental approach that he's taking. Now, it's independence, but it's not isolationist, and that's really important. It's a very muscular independent America, where fundamental national interests, as Donald Trump perceives them, are going to be pursued with great force. I mean, he's, I don't know, remember the verb, going to wipe out ISIS. What he's going to do, we'll find out. I think he's going to do something. But this is a very military retrenchment. It's kind of bifurcated. It's not your classic America pulls back at all. I other aspect of this is I think it's going to be sticky. There are elements to the way Trump thinks that have a lot of resonance, if not merit, to them. Americans don't get what free trade agreements have bought them. And you go over to the Peterson Institute, economists will fight with themselves over how much it actually has delivered. Americans don't get what interventions have done, Libya, Iraq, Afghanistan, to improve their lives. And Trump's playing on that. And he's playing on that in a very sophisticated way, or at least trenchant way. Sophisticated, maybe overdoing it. But it's in a way that I think will have stickiness to it. So what then really flows, the risks? Where does the rubber hit the road on independent America? First, the very nature of the international system, which I've referred to. The U.S. has been the underwriter of international security. And again, for better or for worse. You're not all Americans, I'm well aware of that. But international basing rights, international bases in the Middle East, in Northeast Asia, in Europe, have provided the guardrails, the framework for the international security system, since I've been a kid. It was a while ago. The free trade agreement, the Bretton Woods institutions, GATT, WTO, IMF, World Bank. These are institutions that are going to be much less well-funded and politically supported by Donald Trump. So that the system as we know it is at risk, I would say. Secondly, this really hits on European security. Trump has been restrained in his support for NATO, kind of pay as you go, let's say. Trump has openly sympathized with right-wing populist movements in Europe, so that the transatlantic relationship, which has been the single most trenchant protector of the system since 1945, is going to be especially hard hit. A third risk that flows from independent America: China. Xi Jinping views America first, independent America, as an opportunity to run around, to be a rule setter, not just a rule acceptor, not just offering alternative visions. And I'll come back to this in the next risk, but there are lots of triggers, lots of ways that China and the US could come into a crisis given independent America, from Taiwan, Hong Kong, North Korea, trade issues. I don't think trade is going to be the big boom that others do. I think that Trump will designate China as a currency manipulator, but be very, very careful about anti-dumping countervailing duties. China can hurt us. China can punch back. I think Mexico, I think NAFTA is where you're going to see the action, and we can come back to that. So then the fourth and final risk on independent America is Vladimir Putin and Russia. I talk to Russian friends all, this is too good to be true for the Russians. This is like, they wake up in the morning and they pinch themselves and they still don't believe it. Putin is going to be able to be rogue and disruptor and get away with it. That's, make of that what you will. That's a risk. That's a big risk. I also think that Ukraine sanctions will be eased, if not lifted, this year. Trump doesn't like them. The Europeans are tired of them. And it's all kind of coming together. So I lead off with a big one, which is independent America and a set of geopolitical risks that flow from it. So then our second risk, China overreacts. This really is, I like this one because it's very much of a Chinese domestic politics focused risk for 2017. This year is going to be a fundamental year of transition in China. Xi Jinping, the 19th Party Congress, every 5 years China's main body meets, is going to be a transformational event for Xi Jinping. He is going to replace 5 of the 7 members of the Standing Committee of the Chinese Politburo, the real decision-making body, with his acolytes, with his buddies. And that is going to make Xi very focused on any potential foreign or domestic threat to his image and to Chinese stability this year. And I think this has been underwritten. Very, very sensitive, very, very powerful man this year. The wood is dry in China. I would argue that political tension in China is as high as it's been since the era of Mao Zedong. The centralization of power by Xi has alienated opponents, even mild opponents. The anti-corruption campaign has been successful, but it's scared the you-know-what, the bejeepers, out of national and regional politicians to the extent that they're not willing to even take decisions right now. So in the run-up to the Congress, you have a lot of tension running around, and that makes Xi even more sensitive about control, about his image. And that leads to the potential that China could well overreact. In the foreign policy sphere, as I've mentioned, the triggers are numerous. First has to be Donald Trump and his China policy. His flirtation with breaking the one China policy. His acceptance of a call from Taiwanese President Tsai Ing-wen. Hong Kong, North Korea, trade, lots of things that could cause an overreaction from Xi Jinping. But also in the economic sphere, where, as you know, Chinese actions have led to a roller coaster in 2015, most violently. But I would submit that President Xi, at any sign of turmoil, and there are going to be signs of turmoil in the Chinese economy, whether it's financial stability, SOE reform, rebalancing, not going the way he wants, he will react vigorously and could react in a market negative way, given the run-up to the 19th Party Congress this year. If he does that, it would lead to significant market volatility globally, as happens whenever China clears its throat. Global markets get a virus. So then I move on to Europe. Weaker Merkel. There are going to be a lot of risks in Europe this year. Brexit, arguably foremost among them. Probably a very tough negotiation. The hardliners on both sides are ascendant. The French and the Germans don't want a lesson out there that you can do this and get away with it. The Tories are more moderate generally, but kind of held hostage to this hardliners of hardcore Brexiteers who say they've got the popular will behind them. So it's looking like a rough landing so far. So far, not so good. And that's going to really fill up a lot of print for good reason on Europe this year. But more. French elections could well go the wrong way. We can come back to that. Fillon, our base case is that Fillon wins. I can explain to you how that could come out with a Le Pen victory. One thing we've learned at Eurasia Group is to have extreme humility about elections. What you don't know can really bite you. Terrorism, Istanbul. The Turkish refugee deal could come unraveled. You get refugees coming back in. You get the whole thing that drove populism in the first place rearing up its head again. Lots of problems facing Europe. Now, when I speak a good bit.